There's a lot of confusion that's going on around when doing something qualifies as being disciplined and when doing something qualifies as bulldozing yourself. This confusion is a problem when one is an important element of success and the other is a road to failure. For this reason, in today's episode, I'm going to explain the difference between being disciplined and bulldozing. To understand bulldozing first, I want you to imagine an actual bulldozer. When a bulldozer encounters resistance or opposition, it drives straight through and over it. It will not stop and consider, and it will not work with whatever is resisting it so that there's any alignment. It in essence plays a zero-sum game with whatever is opposing it. I win, you lose. I get my way, you don't. And this is a recipe for a terrible relationship with yourself and others, as well as being a recipe for failure. When someone is disciplined, or has a high degree of self-discipline, what this means is that they have an internal drive to act based on their goals. This implies the ability to use their own conscious objective free will to govern their emotional system, mind, and body. And as such, they are not controlled by their own thoughts, emotions, or body, even when they encounter resistance. When we say that a person is disciplined, what we're talking about in layman's terms is that they can take action regardless of the fact that it doesn't feel good, or that they do what needs to be done to achieve their goals even though it's difficult or painful, or that they pursue what they think is right despite temptations to abandon it, or that they make themselves work hard or behave in a certain way without anyone else having to tell them to do it. All of these examples imply that self-discipline has something to do with self-governing, as well as the ability to persevere towards one's aim even though there is resistance. Keep in mind that resistance is any oppositional force. Resistance can come from the outside, or it can come from the inside, or both. There is a big space between the two extremes of bulldozing right through any resistance you encounter and allowing any resistance you encounter to dictate what you do and don't do. In other words, ignoring and disregarding resistance and letting the resistance be in control of you. Discipline and success lies in between these extremes. But this in-between space is not about balance. It's about working directly with your resistance. Working with resistance means seeing, feeling, and hearing into it deeply so as to become aware of the cause and the why of the resistance. From there, it's about resolving that resistance so as to make a decision with your conscious free will that is actually in your best interests. Doing so will make it so that all of you can say yes to something because it will feel right for you to do, potentially even if it comes with discomfort. Living without discipline means that you are at the mercy of everything around you. It means your life is limited. When faced with the inevitable downsides of doing something, you'll give up on it, achieve nothing, build up nothing, never end up where you want to be. You're going to be unreliable, unable to plan. You're going to be a floater in life. You're going to align with your resistance, regardless of whether or not that resistance is actually in your best interest or against it. You will also fail to delay instant gratification in the face of short-term temptation. You will have ruined every relationship that you have in your life, and you will be at the mercy of everything around you, including your own mind, emotions, and body. Living your life by bulldozing means you are unresponsive to yourself and to the world around you. It means you are willing to play zero-sum games with parts of yourself and with things external to you, and by doing so, you are choosing to put yourself and others in danger. There is valuable information within resistance. Keep in mind that resistance is not going to be something that you're going to learn the information underneath, so that makes you pretty ignorant, right? Ignoring the information can be catastrophic to you and to other people around you, and to your success. With true discipline, you are working with yourself, not against yourself like you are with bulldozing. An important thing to know is that it doesn't feel good is not the information you're looking for when it comes to what you should and shouldn't do. The fact that something doesn't feel good is simply your alert that there's like a red flag. It's the same as hearing the "you've got a message" ring on your cell phone. But it's as strange to decide that this automatically means you shouldn't do something as it is to decide that when your "you've got a message" ringer goes off on your phone, it means you need to not do something. All it means is you've got a message. You have to actually see, hear, feel what that message is underneath the alert in order to make the right decision relative to the information that is contained within that message. It's very important to know that you, and/or a part of you, are perfectly able and capable of choosing what does not feel good for an important purpose. You're able to say yes to negatives, and there's a big difference between part of you really saying no to something for some valid reason, and part of you saying yes to something even though it doesn't feel good. Look, if all this was not the case, you would never exercise. All you would ever eat is junk food. We would never learn anything new. Say goodbye to all sports. No one would ever go through pregnancy, that's for sure. You would never work late hours to accomplish something important, or anything else involved in accomplishing something important. No one would ever leave an abusive relationship. There would be no societal revolutions. There would be no innovations regarding the negatives that come with anything. The process of healing in general would be out the window. Okay, you get the point, right? When you hear teachings like follow your joy or listen to your emotional guidance system, that doesn't mean never do anything that feels uncomfortable or painful. That doesn't mean if it hurts, it's wrong. That doesn't mean your emotional guidance system is always going to lead you to something that feels good, so let it govern your life. That also doesn't mean that your feelings are always a reflection of an accurate perception. Discipline goes hand in hand with following your joy and listening to your internal guidance system. But for them to operate hand in hand, you have got to understand that your emotions and mind and body are simply providing you with information about you and the world around you all day long. But this information, though important, is not necessarily always accurate, nor is it necessarily a good thing to allow to govern you. Your conscious awareness and free will must heed this information and use it to decide what is right to do given that information. If you are making a choice from conscious, objective free will, oftentimes it becomes obvious that the right choice to make is in the direction of something painful because you align with the reason for doing so. Okay, so now that I've said all of that, to understand this difference between discipline and bulldozing and allowing your resistance to rule you completely, here's an example. Or should I say 3? Bryce is currently obese and has his sights set on losing weight. He decides to go on an extreme diet and commit to going to the gym with an aggressive personal trainer every day, because he thinks this is going to get him the fastest results. This goes pretty good for about 2 days, then he starts to feel deprived and like he's being forced to do something that he really doesn't want to do. He has big-time resistance to what he is doing. None of it feels good. Bryce decides this is normal and forces himself to keep dieting and bulldozes himself to exercise anyway. In fact, he pushes himself even harder. And as if things weren't unenjoyable enough, his ankle starts hurting, making what he is doing in the gym even harder for him to do. He bulldozes through this too and ends up injured. As a result, guess what? He has to take a break to recover, but this sends him into a nothing ever works out for me spiral. And eventually, he breaks down and copes emotionally by binging junk food. That is your bulldozing example. Next example. Charlie is also obese and has his sights set on losing weight. He decides to exercise and go on a diet on Monday. Because of this, he's very excited and starts off the morning on Monday by eating cottage cheese and cantaloupe. And he takes a 45-minute walk. At lunchtime, 2 of his friends invite him to a restaurant. He goes along, looks at the menu, at all these delicious options that he could order, and realizes that the only thing on his new diet is an overpriced salad. Well, needless to say, he starts feeling bad. He feels resistance to staying on his new diet. When he closes his eyes to see why he's feeling so bad, he sees that he's feeling deprived and cut off from enjoyment. He immediately decides this is not good, and so he lets himself order whatever he really wants off of the menu, especially because his friends, who want him to feel good, are oh so encouraging about him getting whatever he really wants to eat. The next morning, Charlie feels really tired getting up, and he doesn't want to go on a walk because of it, even though he does want to lose weight. So what does he do in response to the resistance? He decides he doesn't want to bulldoze himself and calls it his rest day. Okay, that is an example of your resistance ruling you. Anti-discipline. Next example, Lyle is also obese and has his sights set on losing weight. He decides to hire a personal trainer and cut out all sugar and junk foods from his diet. Even though his personal trainer was really good and supportive, his first day of exercising with this personal trainer made him feel really bad. He initially interpreted that resistance as, no, we shouldn't be doing this. However, when this resistance came up, he didn't bulldoze it, nor did he just give in to it. He decided to sit on a park bench and really become aware of the why behind the way he feels. Doing so made him aware that he feels bad because working out makes him feel bad about himself because of how little he can currently do. That he doesn't really want to go back and feel the physical pain or the shame that he feels when he has to exercise. Lyle thinks through the option of quitting based on this reasoning. After all, he can quit, and decides it's actually bad reasoning to quit because it would simply be avoiding shame. So instead, he decides to dive into that shame with the completion process, and doing so brings him back to an initial trauma, which he resolves. He also decides to do belief work. He works on the belief, I shouldn't be fat. When he does this process, he sees that given everything he went through, it makes perfect sense that he's fat and has struggled to lose weight for so long. He also sees that his personal trainer actually has no judgment towards him being fat and wants to be a support to his health. He sees that unlike his stepfather, who made him bad and wrong for everything, his personal trainer wants him to feel good and to feel good about himself. As a result, Lyle feels in alignment with exercising, even if it isn't comfortable, and decides to involve his personal trainer in how he's feeling so that they can work through it together and adjust things accordingly if that feeling arises in a workout session, while still remaining committed to working out. When Lyle starts to feel like he doesn't want to be on a diet anymore, especially when he went to Thanksgiving dinner and saw how many of his absolute favorite foods he would have to say no to, he started to question himself about what it was about those foods that he felt so desperate for. He realized that it wasn't even like a physical craving. He realized it was emotional. The part of him that wanted to say screw you to the diet wanted the emotional element of those foods. He associates those foods with togetherness and comfort, something that he really struggles to feel with the people in his family. He wants to feel those feelings, and also he wants to stop eating foods that are bad for him. So with that information, he decides to suggest to the family to play a specific game. Why? Because Lyle feels that when they play that game, everyone's together and there is harmony and he feels comforted, kind of like what he was trying to go for with the food. He also decides that on special occasions, like holidays, he's going to let himself have a taste of his favorite foods, but to not have a portion of them. He also decides that when he's going to have a taste of them, he's going to really savor them and experience them in his whole body so that he won't feel completely deprived and cut off from joint experiences. As a result of working with his resistance to make up his mind about what to do about it, Lyle stays disciplined to lose weight. And he does lose weight. Not only that, he heals a great deal of the emotional and mental patterns that are feeding his obesity, because those patterns came up during the process, as they would, in the form of his resistance to losing weight. The moral of the story is, when resistance arises, you must see it as important, you must be responsive to it, you must look directly at it, you must explore it, you must question it, you must work with it. The why behind resistance is absolutely everything, and based off of all the information that resistance contains, you must then make a decision about what is best to do, knowing that to act in alignment with your internal drive to act based on your goals, this often means saying yes to a specific unwanted thing, or to doing something even though it doesn't feel good. Have a good week.